Well, good morning to everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is our second in our advocacy webinar series. Our first one, if you missed it, you can go back and look at it on our website or on our YouTube channel. And that one was a more general session talking about how you can tell your story, whether you're talking to legislators or just advocating in general. So I encourage you to go back and view that if you haven't. Today's focus is on connecting with legislators and specifically here in the US. Obviously, I live in the US, so that's what I know. And so we're going to focus on that today. And we are going to hear from a few advocates and then get some tips and tricks and things like that that can help you with that. So our agenda for today is, again, to hear from some of our advocates in our community. You don't know who represents you, that's okay. We're going to find that out today. And just learn how to build those relationships and why it's important. So just a little bit about who I am. I am a mom to Peter and Michael Knutson, who have cell and unrelated myopathy. When they were younger, we had received a clinical diagnosis when our older son was 2.5. We received the genetic diagnosis when they were 5 and 8. They are now 16 and 13. Just started school this week and are doing really well. And we were enjoying the North Woods this summer, as we like to do here in Wisconsin. And I started my advocacy journey in 2019 when some other community members invited me to go to DC for Rare Disease Week. So the first photo on the left is the first opportunity I had to meet with legislators and their staff to advocate for CMD and for rare diseases in general. And obviously during COVID, we had to move to a virtual advocacy. And so on the right, that's me participating in meetings that were held virtually, and meetings are still being held virtually as well. And then another photo below of in DC. And so this year we have launched an initiative here in the CureCMD community called Your Voice Matters. And through a grant from the Muscular Dystrophy Association, we have been providing information and webinars to help empower our community to advocate. And advocacy can look a lot of different ways. However, today we're going to focus specifically on legislative advocacy. So the first thing we're going to do is hear from our community members. So I'm going to hand it over to DeeDee, who is going to tell you about her experiences as an advocate.
Good morning. My name is DeeDee Swiecki. I am also from Wisconsin, like Lani, but I am a little further north. I am married to my husband, Kit, and we have 4 daughters. Our first 2 are off in college. We have a high school senior, and we have our daughter, Paige. Paige is 11, and Paige does battle college and 6 muscular dystrophy. We found out when Paige was age about 18 months. And so we have been battling this with her, alongside her. I would like to just a little background on us. My husband and I are both medical, which basically makes us a little bit dangerous when it comes to the research and understanding what's going on with Paige's condition. We try to stay up on it the best we can. My husband's a surgeon and I'm a physical therapist. And that just gives us just a little taste of the background so we can figure out and try to follow the research and help her the best we can. The advocacy piece, I'd like to say, in terms of advocacy, I've always been an advocate for my daughter. If you think about your kids in terms of advocacy, it's just being their biggest supporter, fighting for them in the schools is part of advocacy, fighting for them in the community, and not necessarily fighting, just standing up and telling their story and making sure that they get what they need. And so when it came to thinking about advocacy at a little larger scale, it just was the natural progression, because I thought, well, this is what we're already doing. We're already speaking up for our daughter. So let's take it to the next level. And I didn't know anything about advocacy when I started in terms of at the national level. And maybe like Lani, I was invited by some other college and six friends in the community, in specific, my friend Jessie Parks, who is a big advocate and does a lot of advocacy. She lives in East Coast area now. And she convinced me to go to DC. And I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll tell my story. And it has been a great experience. I would like to say one of the other pieces is that I did take two of my daughters. My first year I went to DC, I took my daughter, Mackenzie. Mackenzie is now a senior in college and a biochem major and working on getting her PhD. Working on it. She wants to apply to a PhD in biochemistry, and I do feel like a lot of that was inspired by visiting NIH, seeing what all the research can do. So it has some inspiration, and it's nice to bring your kids on board, or even the affected individual if you can, because you can really make a difference. In terms of being an advocate, it's really just telling your story. I went to DC armed with literally just the one-pager document that we put together for your kids. It has your kids' picture, what condition they have, and how it affects them. And then basically what your legislators kind of need to know to help in the rare disease community. That's all I had. And it was an opportunity. They train you while you're there, and how to be an advocate, how to speak to the legislators. So you really go into the rooms with the legislators knowing what you're supposed to do. If you see the slide, that's my picture of my oldest daughter with Senator Baldwin. You don't always get to talk to the legislators. That day we had the privilege that we got to speak with our senator, and it was just fantastic to have the opportunity to tell your story. And the big push is to try to get them to join the Rare Disease Committee. And although our legislator is not on that, she really backed rare disease. And I feel like if you tell your stories to the legislators, then they're able to potentially go for the legislation that's going to make a difference in your kid's life, to vote positive for those changes that need to happen. The picture on the right was a couple years later. My daughter Claire and I, you can't really see her, but she's in the back row with the white shirt and long hair. She loved being an advocate too, because she wanted to tell her sister's story and make a difference on a different scale. So it was really great. There's an organization called YAR, Young Adult. Lani, you might be able to help me what the R is. Young Adult. What does the R stand
I'm
for?
blanking too, but
Yeah, so there's an organization when you go to the conference in DC for the advocates, that's the young adult version of what we're doing as adults. So young adults have a chance to tell the story too. And so Claire got to participate with that and learn alongside some other young adults. And those young adults are potentially the affected individual, as well as siblings or family members or some sort. Now, I do plan someday. It's not something I can go to every year. And I don't know if you have to. It'd be nice if you could. But if you can find time in your life to go to DC to talk to your legislators, because I'll tell you right now, and Lani, you can correct me, but in Wisconsin, we didn't have a single any representation on what's called the Rare Disease Committee. And the year that my oldest daughter and I were there, that legislator, the congressman, has since moved off, but we were able to get him to join the Rare Disease Committee. And I feel like that was solely because we went in and talked to him. There was only 3 people in the room. And he joined the Rare Disease Committee. His name is Ron Kind, and we've since got a different legislator. But wow, just to have that voice on Capitol Hill with the legislation was nice. And I will say that someday Paige has already expressed, Paige is my daughter who's 11 with college in 6, she wants to go and be her own advocate. So she was able to watch what we did with her siblings, and she'll go, and I haven't decided what age we want to bring her, but she's quite well spoken in terms of her disease and what she thinks is important, and we want her to be able to tell her own story too someday. So that's kind of all I have, except that I would just like to say that you don't have to be professional at this. You just have to have the heart to share your story and to make a difference on a level little higher than your community. If you're doing anything right now in terms of advocacy, that might just be standing up within your school. If you can go that far, you can take that next leap to talk to your legislators and see if you can make a difference on a larger scale. And it's a powerful experience. It was for me, my daughters, and it will be for my daughter Paige too. Thank you for your time. I hope that we can bring some more folks on. We really didn't have many last year. Lani can attest to this. From the Cure CMD community, I think we had less than 10 people. And we'd love to get more. And I hope that if you're even remotely considering it, any one of us would love to talk to you guys about our experience, what it means to go there. You don't have to be professional at this. You just have to have someone that has a heart to share it. Okay.
Thanks, DeeDee.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks, Rachel. She dropped the link in there for young adult rare representatives. Couldn't remember the R's either. That link and many others are on the Cure CMD website as well, which I'll provide at the end. So
okay.
Thank you, DeeDee. And then our next advocate is Sondra. And I'll let her introduce herself. We were just joking right before this that the Capitol Hill 2020 is not a typo. We were in DC literally weeks before the world shut down, and that was quite an experience. So I'll turn it over to Sondra.
Hi, my name's Sondra. I live in northern New Jersey, central northern New Jersey. That's a picture of me with a good friend of mine, Sarah Foy, who turns out only lives 4 miles away, and she heads up Team Titan, which is a sister organization, I guess, to ours. And she's a close dear friend, and that was one benefit of advocacy at my first meeting whatsoever. Anyway, I have Bethlehem myopathy, which is a type of collagen 6 CMD. My sibling and I both have that, and we inherited it from our dad. And when I got diagnosed, one thing I said is I could get upset, I can take action, and I took action. And I figured, how can I do this? And one way is advocacy. And I agree with DeeDee, advocacy takes so many forms. It's not all, I find the longer I'm living with this, that we're advocating a lot in our lives in many different ways. But early on, right before the pandemic, I did go to Washington, D.C., and I met Lani there, which was wonderful, and other people. I felt like this was a cocktail party for rare disease. And I learned a lot through that experience. But I had some suggestions for advocating. I do enjoy advocating more on the federal level than the state level, even though I've done it to a small degree, but I get a lot of satisfaction doing that. And I find the longer you advocate, do legislative advocacy, you learn what works and what doesn't work. And many of us have made similar mistakes. And I wouldn't even call them mistakes. I think they're just you're learning, and I'm still learning. But if you want to know bills specifically related to neuromuscular disease, the Every Life Foundation, which is part of the RDLA, always lists a ton of bills, and they come out with a monthly newsletter, so you know what's current. And another good website is the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And then there's smaller groups like the Haystack Project. And when I write letters to Congresswoman Cheryl, who's been very supportive of the rare disease community, she's District 11 in New Jersey, very often, and our senators, Senators Booker and Menendez, I'll always put RDLA, Cure CMD, I put Team Titan, I put as many organizations, and it gets their attention, I find, when you put all those things, patient advocate for, it does get their attention, and they're more likely to read up. And sometimes my friend Sarah and I will put both our names, and that really helps as well. I always think it's a good idea to read up on a bill that you're asking for your representative to support. And the best website I find is congress.gov. And if you go to congress.gov, you can put the bill number. I know I'm going to the last congressional session, but I think it's HR 1690, which called for a rare disease section of the FDA. It didn't go through, but they're working to get something done from that. But I was able to read up and see, is my congresswoman supporting that? Or my senator supporting that? And you can find out, and it summarizes the bill, and it tells what stage it's at. Is it just in a committee being introduced? Has it been presented on the floor? It gives a lot of good stuff. So congress.gov. The next thing is relationships with your representatives take time. I found recently with Senator Booker's office, I'm getting a lot more that I asked for, and I just felt it was going slow for a few years, and now I know his health legislative aid, and that helps enormously. So last, I think with Rare on Capitol Hill, I wasn't able to go. My doctor did not want me to go. And so I said, how can I find a way of being part of this? And I got in touch with someone at the Every Life Foundation, Caitlin Laws, and she said, this is what you can do. And then they actually accommodated for people who could not go. So I was able to take those bills, and I was able to be effective by asking for appropriations for, I think it's called NCATS, and Lani, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but Senator Booker came back at his office, Gloria Nunes at his office came back and said, Senator Booker will be supporting that. And I was like, wow, I didn't even have to go, and I was able to be effective. So it's not that I didn't want to go, I certainly did, but my doctor recommended I don't. So you can still take part in that event. And again, by building those relationships with whoever the health legislative aide is, that helps enormously. I'm going to put Congresswoman Cheryl has a wonderful legislative aide, and I'm saying hats off to Julie Jochum. I need to mention her name because she's just been wonderful. And so when we go in there, when Sarah and I do go into meetings for Rare Across America, it was like a get together, have coffee, and what do you want? And we'll get back to you. And it's more like family. So, but that takes time to build. And indeed, Julie and I ended up going to the same high school and elementary school, and you just find out things about them. But the health legislative aid is the key to getting in touch with your representative. And I didn't put this in there, but I also find what's helpful is look at what legislative districts are around you. So next to me is a District 7, and unfortunately the congressman there was just voted out of office. But I used to deal a lot with District 7 Congressman Malinowski, a lot with their office. He was very supportive. I'm sure that the current congressman is supportive too, and I do believe I'm not sure, but he probably joined the Rare Disease Caucus. It is helpful to get in touch with other representative offices in your state. I find that helps a lot. And again, like a hats off to, we have a congressman in North New Jersey. His name just slipped my mind. And I think a relative of his even had a rare disease. So he's amazingly supportive. So I'm often in touch with that office as well. But I think learning about what needs to be done, Congress.gov, the NDA, and the Every Life Foundation will give you really pertinent bills. I like the Haystack Project too. And that monthly newsletter, again, from the RDLA is very, very helpful and helps you learn about what is current, what needs to be done if you follow their monthly newsletter. And again, don't be afraid of, saying the wrong thing. I will admit I was asking for Congressman Malinowski to support, I think it was HR 1696, which is allowing for more access on planes. And eventually a lot of this has come through. And I didn't know he was already supporting it. And I was like, oh my gosh, but he was very nice about it. So that's all. And try to be bipartisan, although you go in there and just leave your political beliefs behind, because I think a lot of people are supportive of rare disease. It has you don't have to, you can be a Democrat, Republican, Independent. Every 10% of our population is affected by rare disease. So that's it.
Thanks, Sondra. I appreciate it. I love that they underscored that you don't have to be an expert to be able to do this. You just have to be able to tell your story, and the rest you can learn. So I wanted to just give some ideas of where do we start. And the first thing that we need to do is to know who represents us. And I have to say, prior to having kids with a rare disease, I didn't always know who my representatives were at the federal or state level. And part of it was because we moved around a lot earlier in our marriage and before that. And it's easy to forget about, but we want to make sure, obviously, the first step is to figure that out. So at the federal level, we have 2 senators. Every state has 2 senators that represents the entire state. And then your member of Congress or representative is elected to the House, and that is based on district. So you only have 1 representative in the House, and that's based on where you live. If you don't know who those are, you can go to this website and just type in your home address, and they will tell you who represents you. And obviously we'll tell you some other details about it as well. At the state level, every state has 2 chambers, a Senate and a House, except for Nebraska. I found out. I did not know that until I was researching for this. And so you also have a senator and a rep that represents you at the state level. In Wisconsin, we our representative and senator are based on where we live. And so I don't have 2 senators representing like I do at the federal level. It's just 1 in Wisconsin. And I'm guessing it's very similar in other states as well. And every state legislature has a website that will tell you who represents you. So again, I'm from the land of beer and cheese. And so the Wisconsin State Legislature has a website, looks like this, and you'll see kind of in the middle there, it says, who are my legislators? And I can type in my address and pull it up, and will tell me who it is. And I find state advocacy to feel a little more personal. My own state representative lives 2 blocks from my house, and I see her when I'm walking out, walking my dog. And so you can sometimes have a little bit more personal relationship with those state legislators because they don't represent as many people and they live in the community that you. And then I just wanted to point out that at local levels, that might be an opportunity for advocacy as well. In most states, they're organized by counties. Each county has an executive and a council or a board. If you live in a city, town, village, or township, you most likely have a mayor and a city council or board that makes local decisions. And then I mentioned school districts just mainly because often, as DeeDee said, we need to advocate at the school district level as well. And so these are just all, I wanted to list all these because I wanted people to understand that there's many opportunities for advocacy. It doesn't have to be just at the federal level or just going to DC. While that's a great experience, and obviously DeeDee and Sondra shared that experience. These are also places where you can get involved that are that might be a different experience, but are just as effective. So let's talk about how do we build this. There's lots of different ways, for sure. And so let's just talk about generally getting to know them. So there are lots of resources in getting to know them, and depending on the level, whether it's federal, state, or local, you'll have different various resources. Every legislator has a website, an official website where they post everything they're doing as a legislator. They also often have a candidate website based on our laws. Legislators have to have 2 separate websites based on whether it is official business or if it's business of being reelected or being elected. So you can look for those 2 things. Social media. I am of a certain age where social media isn't always intuitive to me, but it's a great place where you can follow them and see what your legislators are doing and what's important to them. Obviously, politicians give lots of interviews, so you can look in other media sources, videos, that sort of thing. Their voting record usually indicates, what's important to them and what they support generally. And I'll be showing you where you can look that up if you're not sure. Sometimes their websites have lists of those things, but it's also public records, so you can look them up as well. Sondra mentioned congress.gov. That's a great place to look, but there are other places too. And then both DeeDee and Sondra mentioned Rare Disease Legislative Advocates. This is a nonprofit that empowers all rare disease communities to advocate. And they keep a scorecard of legislation that is pertinent to the rare disease community, which CMD is one. And so you can quickly look and see if your legislator is supporting a certain bill that would help the rare disease community. Another organization who does similar work is the National Organization for Rare Disorders. They're a much broader organization, whereas RDLA is focused strictly legislative. All right, and so what do we want to know? Well, we want to know who they are. What's important to them? Do they have a family? Do they have kids? Do they have where are they from? What was their job before becoming a legislator? And then of course at the local level, often those people still have day jobs, and so what do they do? Are they in healthcare? Then they might be more sympathetic to issues about healthcare or accessibility. Even at the state level, many legislators have day jobs or side jobs, or they were something before they became a legislator. They weren't a career politician. Do they have a connection to rare disease? Sondra mentioned a legislator who had a connection, and obviously that makes them more in tune to the needs of our community. Types of bill they've authored or supported. Do they hold leadership positions on committees? So every legislator has a position on a committee, and each committee has a different focus. For example, our senator here in Wisconsin is on the health committee. And so she is really in tune to what is happening at in healthcare and legislation related to healthcare. And then do you have anything in common? Like Sondra said, once she built a relationship with her congresswoman, it was like just having coffee with a friend and talking about what was going on, what's up new, and finding out that she went to the same high school as her legislative aide. So, making those connections creates a relationship, as you know, with anybody, but including your legislators. So I pulled this off of congress.gov, and so I looked up my congresswoman, Gwen Moore, and this is the list of bills that she has either co-authored, authored, co-sponsored. All of those things mean different things, but they are showing that she is supporting them. They are all in the screenshot are all bills. They have not been passed. You'll notice that they give, as Sondra said, the status of the bill. So, for example, that first one has just been introduced. It has not passed either the House or the Senate. It's likely in committee. If you clicked on it, you would get a lot more detail, but I wanted to give an overall picture of this website. On the left-hand side, you can see that you can choose which Congress we're talking about. Gwen Moore has been in the House for quite a while, and so you can look and see, what currently is she working on, what has she supported in the past, and those sorts of things. And there's other ways to search and things like that. So if you really want to dive deep into their voting record and what they're supporting, congress.gov is a great place. And I wanted to talk just briefly about legislative aides and staff because Sondra mentioned it, DeeDee mentioned it, and I think sometimes we think when we show up at their office that we're going to be meeting with the member or when we call there. But just like any other office, one person cannot do all the things. And so they have people that work for them that provides support for that member of Congress. And their duties can include a lot of different things depending on their experience and their training. Some simply are just coordinating meetings, attending meetings, taking notes, that sort of thing. Some will assist with drafting speeches. They often are conducting lots of research and taking data and presenting it to the member of Congress or the legislator. They are really kind of the people who they consult all of the experts and then present that to the legislator. They often talk with constituents. They can help, show them where different resources are, things like that. And if, depending on their expertise, they may advise on those particular issues. Sondra mentioned a healthcare legislative aide. All offices have someone who specializes in healthcare, and they are the expert, and they're the ones that are advising the member of Congress on, what's going on currently in terms of bills and things like that related to healthcare. So when you show up for a meeting and it's their legislative aide, it might seem a little insulting, but it's not. They're really the experts, and they're the ones that are advising. And so they're a really important part of that office. And, they are just as important to speak with as the member. So not all of us have a week to spend in DC, and not all of us have it every year to do. So based on how much time we have, we can still advocate. So a couple easy things you can do is just to send an email or call your legislator and just share your story, who you are, what your challenges are, how changes in policy might help your situation. Those are all good starting points to starting a relationship with your legislator. Especially if they're newly elected, it's a great time to introduce yourself, because sometimes new people come in and you might have had a great relationship with one legislator, but now you have to introduce yourself to that the newly elected legislator. Following them on social media, as I said earlier, just to get to know who they are, what they support, what they're involved in. Most members or legislators have a newsletter, so you can subscribe to that. I don't always have time to read all of it, but I can at least scan it and see if anything is healthcare related that they're working on. And then very frequently we will send out on social media, sometimes in our newsletters or on our blog, some quick action items for you to support. And other organizations, including RDLA and NORD, have these fillable forms where you just type in your name and address and it creates a template to support a very specific issue. They really literally take 5 minutes to complete, and then it gets emailed to your legislators. So those are great ways to just get involved at a very introductory level. But if you want to get a little bit deeper, you can send more regular emails or make phone calls. Maybe something new is happening that you want them to know about. Those repeated interactions are creating a relationship with them. You can request a meet with them in person. You don't have to be part of a big organization to do that. You are their constituent and you can request a meeting. They're not always available to meet with you, but they, you can request that, and they have schedulers that work on that. You can use social media as a way to advocate by tagging your legislators, asking them to support specific things. And RDLA has some great resources on how to do that. Again, over a certain age, I am not the expert for sure, so we'll rely on our younger counterparts to help us with that. If you're holding an event, invite them to your event. I once had an event and had a candidate show up just to learn more about rare disease. So they obviously can't always come, but again, that's another touch point in helping them get to know who you are. DeeDee mentioned the one-pager. We have an example of that on the CureCMD Advocacy website that you can look at. And it's just telling your story, who you are, what your story is, what your challenges are, what legislators can do to help. The NORD has a rare action network in each state, and you can look into that if you are interested in getting more involved at the state level. And then, as Sondra mentioned, subscribing to newsletters from our advocacy partners. We work with these partners because alone, CureCMD is a small voice, but the issues that we face are often also issues that others face in the rare disease community, and so we band together to make our voice even louder. As Sondra said, 1 in 10 Americans have a rare disease, and so if we are all speaking together, it's a much louder voice than our small CureCMD community. And then if you want to go really jump in, there are lots of different ways, and I won't go through all of these, but I do want to point out that if you are really interested in policy and really interested in getting to know exactly what is currently being introduced into the House or the Senate, the RDLA monthly webinars are a great way to keep up on that, as are the newsletters, as I said. And they help you know exactly what things bringing to your legislators' attention. Rare Across America is similar to Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill, but it happens in district. And what that means is that your meetings are happening in your state. So for example, the one photo of Sondra was recently an in-person meeting in New Jersey with her congresswoman during Rare Across America. Currently, they are having us meet virtually with our senators' offices, and then having in-person meetings in district with representatives in the House. Although this time around, I had all virtual meetings. So it's a great way to get your feet wet and not have to travel if that's not an option for you. And then just some, local things that you can get involved. Our city has a committee for citizens with disabilities, and that could be something that exists in your city. If not, maybe you want to start one, or to organize a project that brings awareness to rare disease or accessibility issues. And if you really want to go even further, you can write op-ed pieces and have it published in a newspaper, or contact your media and share your story. And there's some resources on how to do that on our website as well. And then I just want to point out, this I find is a little more useful at the state level and local level, but you can volunteer to work on someone's campaign. And it's a great way to get to know who they are. Maybe even if they aren't elected yet, you can get to know them a little bit before they are. Obviously that's a personal choice based on your own politics, but I have found that very effective. Pamela, yes, question.
I was waiting for you to talk about the campaign stuff. There's a lot of ways for us to work. I'm an activist. I'm actually paid organizer for a group out of California, and I train phone bankers and lead phone banks all across the United States. And when you have mobility issues and a lot of the other issues that we might have, being able to join the virtual phone banks is a way that you can feel empowered and know that you're making a difference. So if you would like to, I can talk about that at some point, but that's something that I do. So, and what are the things that you brought up about, see if your city has a committee for citizens with disabilities? I live in North Carolina. Every city is supposed to have a human relations committee. And a lot of times a lot of these committees lack the representation of a person with a disability. So it's really easy to get started. I know if you're watching this and you might feel that this is a lot of information and you might be feeling daunted. It is not that difficult to get involved. And then the energy, the power, it really does make a difference, and it helps. I don't know. It makes a difference, and it helps you feel more empowered.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pamela. I agree 100%. And thank you for sharing your experiences. I find working at a local level really rewarding because it's really tangible. It's, part of my community. Whereas sometimes that federal seems a little nebulous, but yes, excellent. There's so many ways to get involved, and these are just ideas. You can just pick one, do a lot. It's up to you. You choose how much you're involved and what works for you. But I want to give a broad variety of ideas, but great suggestions, Pamela. Thank you. And I just wanted to plug that the Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill, which DeeDee and Sondra talked about, it's coming up again. We always have it during or on Rare Disease Day, which is the end of February. And here are some photos of your CMD advocates in the past. I wasn't able to get everybody on here who has been to DC, but different advocates with their legislators or with staffers And we'll have more information about this coming up very soon. Registration usually starts after the new year. And yes, thank you. That was the next thing I was going to say, Rachel, was that we do offer travel scholarships to attend DC. We know it's not cheap to do that. So also RDLA offers some as well if you're a new advocate. So don't think that you have to pay for this all yourself. And the conference itself is free. You don't pay for that. It's really just travel and a hotel or Airbnb that you need to. And then Pamela mentioned that she's running for school board, which again, you can run for office. That's another great way to jump in and have your voice be heard. So, all right. So why is this important? And this will be kind of the last thing we talk about here. I know I felt like, okay, does this really make a difference? Why do I have to do this? But I was thinking as I was preparing for this, like how many times I have to explain, even to people who know about healthcare, about our boys and their disease. And, you know, our elected officials might not know anything about it either. So we're here to educate. And I know sometimes we don't have capacity to do that because of what's going on in our lives, but it's important that we tell our story. Having those allies in place so that when we need help is a lot easier than, and makes it a lot faster than if we have to create the relationship, then ask for help with a specific issue. So if you've already established that relationship, it's going to be a lot easier to make that ask. And just remember, you're the expert. You know your disease and rare disease the best. And legislators rely on their constituents to help them learn about these things. And of course, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? And so we want to make sure we're continuing to bring that out there. And the other thing I always try to remember this, that when you have a bill that you want to become a law, it takes a long time to get there. And there are lots of points where it can fail and lots of things that needs to go through to be able to get to that point. And so that regular conversation, if we want to support a specific bill, then that's going to help move that bill along and hopefully get it to the finish line. But again, most bills that are introduced do not become laws, and because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of steps to get. And I always like this graph. RDLA often shows it when they're doing webinars. And this research is a little old, but it shows what's most effective when it comes to advocacy. And you'll notice that top of the list is in-person visits from and I think this is, of course, data from pre-COVID. So I think Zoom and virtual meetings are just as effective now. But notice that it's all of those top few things are hearing from constituents. Okay? The lobbyists, which I was surprised, is way kind of in the middle. And so our voices are important. Legislators want to hear from us. And this is a way for them to know who we are and what our strengths. And Sondra alluded to this, and I wanted to make sure that I brought this up as well, that we have, we're not just people who care about rare disease and CMD. We also care about other issues. But when we're going in to talk about our story, we are not a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or whatever. We are there representing the rare party, and rare disease does not care who you are and what your politics are. It'll affect anybody and everybody. And so we need to remember that we are bringing a nonpartisan issue to our elected officials. Also, keep in mind that you may have an idea of how a certain legislator will respond to an issue or how their staffers will respond, but it's not always true, because what we see and hear in the media isn't always what is happening day to day in their office. And So just presenting your story and ask in a neutral and nonpartisan way is a great way to create relationships and allies, and to not have a preconceived notion of what's happened. I had that experience this past February when I was in DC. Someone who was advocating with us didn't want to speak in one of the senator's office because she didn't think that he would be supportive of their ask. And we encouraged her to share anyway, and the staffer who we were meeting with was very supportive. So you just never know what may or may not be a priority. And you know, obviously they have opinions as well, but it's good to just keep an open mind and remember that this is not a partisan issue. And just a few resources here. All of these things are linked on our CureCMD /advocacy website. So if you don't remember any of these, or if something you missed something, again, go to that page on our website, and all of that will be here. There's lots of resources. You can dive much deeper into any of these ways of connecting, and there's lots of ways that you can learn how to do these things. And you're always welcome to reach out to me or to CureCMD, and we are happy to direct you towards resources. We can't be experts in these as well. I'm a volunteer. I have a job and kids to take care of, and so we rely on our partner organizations that are really focused on advocacy. All right, and then lastly, then I'll just put my information here. You can always email us at advocacy@curecmd.org, and I will get that email, and we'll get you hooked up to the right resources and ways that you can get involved. And if you don't know how you want to be involved, I'm happy to talk with you and kind of talk through that and see ways that we can do that. So again, always feel free to reach out if you have questions. Thanks for joining us.